Hello everyone. I wanted to do a recording to give you some builds to work with in New World and share some of my thoughts with that. I will go ahead and start with my thoughts and get into the builds that are on the screen. There will be timestamps in the description. Okay, I don't really have too much to say on New World right now. I played the open beta and I've watched tons of YouTube videos on in-game content because obviously I'm not going to burn myself out by playing something that will get wiped. There's really no point anyways. That said, based on my own playtime, experimentations, and the YouTube videos, I can say that New World is not really in a great position right now in terms of balance, whether that be PvE or PvP, and its optimizations seem a bit off. I have noticed that with the newer video card that I got help getting, which is a 3060, I did struggle with FPS, and I made sure to put it on medium graphics and everything. So I was certainly lagging a little bit at certain intervals, even at medium graphics. I noticed that there was wild inconsistencies with people posting their FPSs in the global chat as well. There were some people that were scoring higher FPS on lower graphics card. It really didn't make sense. So there's something definitely wonky going on with the optimization. Between that and the balance, it's really hard for me to form a consensus on whether or not I think this is a great game or not. It seems fun, but ultimately it does need some work. And I can hopefully show you some of the balancing issues associated with what I was saying. Let me go ahead and start by getting to the builds, and you probably will be able to see some of that. So before I go into specifics, I'll go and tell you what's not there. You will not find me doing a musket build, Warhammer, or Great Axe. That's because I didn't like these weapons, and I felt that their DPS wasn't enough to justify doing a build for. I know what everybody's thinking. They're going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? Great Axe is one of the most popular in PvP. I know. Don't worry. You'll see why in just a little bit. But, yeah, so you won't find me doing builds for those. And we'll go and get into that now. But, well, by showing you the other builds, and then you'll see why. Okay, starting with the build that's been on my screen. This is what I dubbed the Crusader build. I do have in my tabs a link to a YouTube video of somebody doing a similar build. Theirs is a tank focus build. Mine's more of trying to balance between doing damage, taking hits, and doing some healing on itself. It's not a primary healing class, but it's enough to just get enough heals out on yourself. So what I'm doing differently than that other build that's tanking is the skills. You'll notice that I am mostly into swords and not shields. I did not do Whirling Blade for this particular build because the chances of you dealing with more than one enemy is highly unlikely. And if you are, it's better that you focus on one target rather than dealing with all of them. So in that regard, at least with this build anyways, I mean, there are builds that do AoE better, but in regards to this build specifically, it's better just to focus on one target and kill them before focusing on the next target. You have the sustainability to make that happen due to the fact that you have the damage to go with the sustainability. When you're in group play, this build is going to be more focused towards being damage support than it is going to be actually doing damage, because it's obviously going to be lower damage than dedicated builds, but your leadership bonus will certainly make it possible for your true damage dealers to actually do a lot. So yes, your entire goal in group is damage support. In PvP, you're more of a duelist is the way you have to think about that with this particular build. That's kind of how to shorten that, I guess you can say. So yes, be aware that you will be switching between your life staff and Sword and Shield. Let me go and tab over real quickly. Okay, so the video I'll be linking, the one that's on my tab, will explain this mess right here, but this is the skills that you will need. After that, it's really just secondary. But don't spend anything else more into this because of the whole weapon swapping thing, and this is actually something that I kind of have a complaint about, that the skills are not really clear in terms of what transfers over when you switch weapons, because certain abilities or their upgrades will cause that to not transfer over. So that's all explained in the video, but you can see that this is how you would have to set it up in order for your skills to transfer over when you go from Life Staff to Sword and Shield. I wish the game was a lot more clear about this. But these are the 3 abilities that you'll be casting on yourself to help you sustain. As far as the stats are concerned, it is split, and there are 55 points to spend. Somebody with more data or math capability than I can probably figure it out. But the way you have to think about this is, if you spend 50 points into strength and you're only getting maybe 100 power, then it might not be worth it, because if you look at the Constitution's next node, it's health based on armor. And given that this class will have a lot of armor, despite being in the light to medium category, you should be able to get something out of it. And I think 50 Constitution is probably between 1,000 to 1,500 health. So you'd have to factor in the base health received from Constitution, as well as the node's passive for additional health based on armor. So yeah, you have to kind of think about that math and whether or not it's worth it. If it's only 100 power from strength, then it's totally worth it to get the extra 1,000 health. By far, because your entire goal with this build is sustained damage. You're not a glass cannon or anything. It's sustained damage. You're there to outlast your enemy. That's how you have to think about the stat spread. Okay, moving on to the next build. This is what I'm dubbing the Icepick build. I have certainly tested both of these builds using the open beta, and I've also confirmed that they will work through YouTube videos. I have seen some high-level play using either of these builds. But anyways, the difference that I'm making here is, in comparison to other builds that are using the rapier with the ice gauntlets, I am focused on the blood side rather than grace. Blood will give you more damage than grace, obviously. Grace is more defensive in nature. But I guess you could do it if you want to, although I think blood's probably better. Now, this is not going to be as straightforward as the Sword and Shield build. That's why I didn't go into great detail about skills, so I will go ahead and do a quick thing here. Okay. Alright, so Flurry is pretty straightforward. It's a solo skill, if you will. It does not require really anything to be connected with it. You'll even see that with its passives. Block damage, cooldown, and then that. So you can see that only one passive works with the other one. But I wouldn't consider it like a big deal because it's only one additional second on the bleed. So I consider it a solo skill because you can use this as your opening skill if you absolutely need to. But if you really want to maximize it, you have to start with Tondo. Tondo is your reach-based skill. It's the one that will cause bleed and extend the range of your melee attack to 5 meters. It's not listed here, but I remember that much from the open beta. It's 5 meters. 5 meters is an extremely long range for a melee weapon. It's the longest in the game. So Tondo will cause a bleed, which your ability, the other one I was just showing, can extend. So it can extend it just a little bit longer until the cooldown comes down and you can apply another Tondo. Because what you have to do is you have to do bleed stacks in order to maximize flourish and finish. That's this ability here. You can see it says it consumes the bleeds. Right there, consuming all rapier bleeds on any target hit, dealing 100%, 110% of the damage immediately. Cooldown 20 seconds. So you do have to be aware that Tondo needs to be, well, Tondo or this ability, Flurry, has to be first. But if you really want to maximize it, do Tondo first, then Flurry, and then repeat that sequence until you get enough stacks for Flourish and Finish. That's how you have to think about that. Okay, so that's that. Let me flip over to the Ice Gauntlet. Okay, so for the Ice Gauntlet, I know that when I was looking at other builds for a similar setup, they were using this ability here, Ice Shower. The problem with Ice Shower is it's a 1 meter thick by a 3 meter long spell. It's very easy to avoid and very easy to miss with. I don't see this as being valuable because of that. It's very, very easy for not just PvP, but also for monsters to dodge. So I don't agree with this. I would agree with either using, where is it? Wind Chill, because Wind Chill actually can give you a pushback. So if you do find yourself in an SL situation, you can for sure do that. Another one I could consider doing is Ice Pylon, because with Ice Pylon, it will automatically damage the enemy while you're going about your business. Ice Pylon is one of the few abilities that actually will transfer over on weapon swaps, so this will for sure stay up when you're doing your rapier stuff. But I would see it as either doing it that way or the other one. I kind of like the idea of using Wind Chill for that knockback, just in case you run into any troubles. And then, of course, you have your Ice Block. I mean, that's a pretty straightforward one to be aware of, so I would say just be aware that when you do engage with your rapier, make sure that you cast, at the very least, Icestorm, and then if you're low on mana or you're finding yourself in a pickle, i.e. that you have more enemies than you can chew, then just cast this, let the AoE do some damage, and just Ice Block. But if you feel confident, just cast this and start using your rapier damage on targets caught within the Ice Storm. That's kind of how you have to think of these abilities. So other than that, it's a pretty straightforward build. I would say stick within light or medium categories, so you get 10 or 20% damage, just like the Sword and Shield build. As far as stat sheets are concerned, it's the same issue as the Sword and Shield build. I'm not sure how much power or damage you're getting out of 50 more Dexterity, but if it's not a whole lot, I would consider taking 50 Focus, so you get that 20% mana regen node. That would certainly help you be more of a hybrid, due to the fact that you would be more capable of casting ice spells for an extended period of time, because in its current state, it's very reliable on very reliant on the rapier. That's its primary focus with the build anyways. It just has intelligence to help with some damage, and also to scale anything that you might find on rapiers, such as the Bizzle or the other one I can't think of. It's the one that says it converts damage into nature. Intelligence does scale that on certain ones, so not only does it scale that, but it scales the rapier as well. Rapier is primarily dexterity, but its secondary is intelligence, so you're technically doing two things for yourself with this build. Its synergy is actually awesome. But yeah, I can assure you, even with low stats, you'll do a lot more damage than the Sword and Shield build, even in its current state. But yeah, so just like the Sword and Shield build, just keep that in mind. If the 50 dexterity is not nearly as worth as much as 20% mana regen, then by all means make that decision. Okay. Where is... Did I skip over build? Oh, yeah, I skipped over build. Okay, well, we'll get back to that in a minute, but just give me a second here. Okay. This is what this is going to be the alternative to the rapier. Instead of having a rapier, you would have a fire staff instead of the rapier, but you would keep the ice gauntlets. This is what I'm dubbing the Chimera build. The Chimera build is entirely reliant on the enemy engaging you and using your AoEs to cause some damage while you're in ice block form. If you're in a group or whatever, it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to get enemies to come to you, at which point the build is designed to do heavy attacks with the fire staff or a series of light attacks with the ice gauntlets. It depends on what the enemy's resistant to, but you do have the ability to switch between the two elements as necessary, as well as their abilities, depending on how things go. It's a very straightforward build. Just be aware of switching in between the two. The main difference between this and the rapier builds, it for sure goes with ice pylon instead of the wind chill stuff, because of the fact that it's essentially adding to the damage that you're flinging down range. But the stat spread's a little bit more straightforward than the last build, because you're entirely reliant on intelligence for damage, so you would just go intelligence, focus, and then constitution. I will do 50 constitution on any build because of that one thing, even if you're a mage. Because that one node that's on constitution says 20% from all healing, potions, or consumables. So it's too good to pass up, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, last build is another range build. This is what I'm dubbing the Hunter or Huntress build. It's using a mix of spear and bow to accomplish its mission. Now, this one has a little bit of a different tactic involved in that it's needing to think about being ranged more than it is melee, and I'll try to explain that. So what you want to do is you want to open with your javelin, because this will knock the target down, and by the time that you throw the javelin and start switching to the bow, it should be still knocked down or just getting back up. As it's getting back up, you want to immediately hit with your bow skill. Whether that be penetrating shot or rapid shot, it really depends on which of the two you're doing. But yeah, so you want to use one of those two after javelin. And then from there, you would just want to either bow them down, or you want to use your melee. When it does come to melee, you have perforate and sweep. I have tried skewer in the open beta, and it really just doesn't do that much damage in comparison to the other two skills that I just showed you for melee. Sure, it triggers the exposed wounds, but I just don't think it's worth it, because this just doesn't do much damage. These two right here, sweep and perforate, just do far more damage. Not only that, it frees up that third slot for using javelin. So I guess you could use cyclone instead of javelin if you want to make this more melee focused, because then that way you have some AoE to deal with groups. But I highly doubt that you'll need that if you play this right between the javelin and all the other abilities, because the bow skill, this right here, penetrating shot, does go through targets, and it does more damage the further it is away from the target. So as long as you line up your targets well and you're paying attention to where the enemies are, you shouldn't find yourself in a 1v2 situation. Or at the very least, you should be able to kite them, one or the other. So that's the build skills in a nutshell. As far as stat points are concerned, it's just like the Chimera build. It's very straightforward. It's just strength, dexterity, and constitution. It's just a slight change up, but emphasis on dexterity because that is the bow's primary thing, as well as the spears. The spear's secondary is strength, so it is going to pull quite well from strength. And because the spear is focused on doing light attacks, as you'll quickly figure out with this build, the extra 5% damage from the strength node is appreciated. So yep, there's your builds in a nutshell. I will quickly just show you this. I don't agree with doing Warhammer or War Axe builds because they're too slow. In comparison to the spear build or the rapier build, they get out DPS. I've seen PvP videos where an equal level rapier build will against an equal level War Axe build just absolutely dominates them because it just does so much damage so quickly. There's very little you can do about it, which is, again, my complaint about the balance, is that there's only certain things that are really working. But anyways, if you are going to do a Warhammer or War Axe build, make sure that your second weapon is going to be the hatchet, so you have something to fling at the enemy. One of the issues that you will have to deal with, either with the Warhammer or War Axe, is the enemy running away from you. And while War Axe might have more of a capability of chasing down enemies than the Warhammer, it's still a problem at the end of the day. Another thing too is just the ability to kite, because just like the spear build, one thing you can do is you can quickly dodge away and use one of your ranged abilities. For the spear, in that case, it's the javelin, but in this case, it's going to be rending throw. So if you do need to kite something and you're low on HP with the War Axe, you can dodge backwards and do a rending throw. That's a for sure strategy that you can do. But it also gives you the ability to just deal with archers that are just being too much of a problem. Well, archers are mage. So if you are going to do a War Axe or Warhammer build, please make sure that hatchet is the secondary. That's one thing I feel is an issue with the other builds that I've been seeing out there. They just don't have a way to deal with being kited. This is a great way to deal with being kited by just poking them back. So yeah, short version is any other build that I just showed you, in my opinion, are top tier and will do considerably better than your War Axe or Warhammer builds. But that is just my opinion based on my own tests and YouTube videos. That's all I have. Thanks for listening.